For 7 months, every morning at exactly 5:45 a.m., Maya Jenkins walked out into the Seattle rain with a paper bag pressed against her chest. She never carried an umbrella. Her sneakers were always damp. Her apron smelled of grease and burnt coffee. And somewhere in her phone, another overdraft alert was waiting. She never checked it until later. Maya was 23. She worked double shifts at a diner in Pioneer Square that tourists walked past and cab drivers knew by heart. Her studio in South Seattle cost more than it should have. Her nursing textbooks sat on the kitchen counter, still sealed in shrink wrap. Sleep was something she borrowed in 15-minute stretches on bus rides home. She was drowning quietly. The kind of drowning no one around you can see. But every morning, before the city opened its eyes, she walked. 3 blocks past shuttered storefronts. Past the alley that smelled like wet cardboard and something sharper underneath. The fog sat low over Pioneer Square, thick and gray, muffling sound until the whole street felt like it belonged to her alone. At the end of those 3 blocks was a rusted metal bench. That's where he sat. The old man. His coat was too thin for the cold. Not by a little, by everything. It hung off his shoulders like it had once belonged to someone broader. His beard was untrimmed, silver and coarse. His shoes were held together by something that wasn't stitching anymore. Most people crossed the street when they saw him, the way you avoid a puddle. Automatic. Maya sat down beside him. Inside the paper bag were 2 Bayo buns she had convinced the night cook to let her take home, a small carton of orange juice, and a thermos of hot green tea she had paid for herself out of the same pocket where her bus fare lived. She handed it to him without ceremony. Just the bag, then the thermos, placed gently into hands that shook from more than the cold. "Morning, Haraboji." She'd started calling him that on the 2nd week. It wasn't his name. She didn't know his name. Haraboji meant grandfather in Korean, and something about the quiet dignity beneath the ruin of his clothes made the word feel right. He never corrected her. Sometimes, while the fog pressed in, he talked about growing up in Korea, about brothers he'd had, about street wars that never made it into newspapers. Wars fought in alleys by men whose names the world never learned. He spoke in a mix of English and Korean, voice low and unhurried, like the words had been sitting inside him for years. Maya listened. She nodded. She didn't interrupt. She assumed the gaps were loneliness filling in for memory, a mind that had seen too much and remembered too little. She didn't question it. She just listened. Because that was the thing about Maya Jenkins that most people in her life had never bothered to notice. She paid attention, not to the people who demanded it. She paid attention to the ones the world had already decided to stop looking at, and it cost her. Her landlord had slipped a warning notice under her door 3 days ago. Her manager docked her tips whenever she showed up minutes late, even on the nights she closed the kitchen alone until 2 a.m. Her bank balance sat in the negatives. She was tired in a way food and sleep could not fix. Kindness cost her everything, and she paid anyway. This morning, the fog was thicker than usual. The bench was cold beneath her. The old man sat with both hands wrapped around the thermos, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. Then his eyes moved, not toward her, toward the street. Slowly, the way a man watches something he has seen before. A black SUV rolled past the end of the block. Tinted windows, a low mechanical hum. It didn't slow. It didn't stop. It passed smooth and silent and disappeared into the fog. The old man watched it go, longer than curiosity. His jaw tightened. His fingers, still wrapped around the thermos, went completely still. Maya noticed, but she didn't ask. He turned back to her. Something in his eyes she couldn't name. Not fear. Something older than fear. Something that looked like recognition. He looked at her the way you look at someone when you already know what's coming for them. Then he smiled. Quiet. Sad. The city tests hearts, he murmured, when no one is watching. Maya smiled back, not fully understanding. She finished her tea. She said goodbye the way she always did, with a nod and a soft, "See you tomorrow, Haraboji." She stood, turned toward the diner, toward another shift, toward another day that looked exactly like the last one. She did not know that this was the last normal morning of her life. She did not know that the man on the bench already did. Before we dive deeper into this story, I need your help. We're on a mission to reach 2,000 subscribers, and every single subscription brings us closer to that goal. If you enjoy stories about complicated love, about people who choose each other despite the odds, please hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Drop a comment and tell me your city or country. Building this community means everything, and knowing where you all are from makes it even more special. It started like every other morning. 5:45, the paper bag, the rain. Maya moved through Pioneer Square the way she always did, head down, shoulders in, invisible. The fog was thinner today. Thinner meant more eyes. She didn't notice them at first. 3 men, leaning against the wall just outside the diner, where the awning dripped and the sidewalk stayed permanently slick. Dark jackets, hands in pockets, cigarettes hanging loose. They weren't waiting for coffee. The one in the middle pushed off the wall when he saw her, moved slowly, casually, the way a cat moves when it already knows the mouse isn't going anywhere. "Yo!" Maya stopped. He stepped into her path, close enough that she caught it, cigarette smoke and something sour underneath. His eyes moved down to the paper bag, then back up to her face. "You work here?" He nodded toward the diner. "Yeah?" Her voice came out flat. "Careful." Cool. He looked at the other 2. One of them smirked. "So here's the thing. This block has a cost." Maya's grip tightened on the paper bag. "Protection money," he said, like he was explaining something obvious. "Everybody on this stretch pays. The shops, the vendors, you too." "I don't have anything to pay," she said. He tilted his head, studied her for a beat too long. Then he reached out and knocked the paper bag out of her hands. It hit the wet pavement with a soft, awful sound. The Bayo buns burst open in a puddle. The carton of orange juice split at the seam. Everything she had packed that morning, everything she had set aside from her own hunger to bring to someone else, split open in the gray water and went still. The man laughed, short, almost bored. Maya stared at the food on the ground. Something moved inside her chest. Not panic, not tears. Something harder than both. She straightened up, her shoulders squared, her jaw set, and when she looked back at him, her eyes were steady. "You don't own this street," she said. Quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight behind it. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker. The kind you only catch if you're watching closely. And from the bench, 30 feet away, half swallowed by fog, the old man was watching. Not casually. He was watching Maya the way someone watches a flame they have been waiting to see burn. The man in the middle glanced toward the bench, saw the old man, dismissed him in half a second, shrugged and walked away with the others, like she wasn't worth his time. Maya didn't move for a long moment. Then she knelt, in the puddle, in the cold. She picked up what was left, the torn paper, the ruined buns. She gathered them anyway, because leaving them there felt worse than anything else she could think of. She walked to the bench, The old man was still. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't." He didn't let her finish. His hand moved, gentle but firm. He caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. She looked at him. His eyes were sharp, sharper than she had ever seen them. No fog behind them. No confusion. Just a clarity that made the air feel different. "You have fight in you," he murmured, his accent thick, his voice low. "That kind of fire doesn't go out easy." Maya swallowed. She said nothing. He let go of her wrist. She left for her shift without looking back. That night, the shower was too hot and she didn't care. The water hit her shoulders and she pressed her forehead against the tile, and the sound that came out of her was not quite a sob. It was smaller than that, quieter. The kind of sound a person makes when they have been holding something in for too long, and their body finally decides to release it without permission. The rent notice was still under the door where her landlord had slipped it. She hadn't moved it. It sat there in the hallway like an accusation. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark, and somewhere in the back of her mind, the old man's voice stayed. Lions don't survive by hiding. She hadn't heard him say it, not exactly. But the way he had looked at her that morning, the way his hand had wrapped around her wrist like he was holding something precious and dangerous at the same time. It was there, in the silence he left behind. Maya closed her eyes. The next morning, she woke at 5:30. She made the bao buns again, packed the thermos, walked the 3 blocks through the fog. The bench was empty. Not empty the way a bench is empty when someone hasn't arrived yet. Empty the way a bench is empty when someone is never coming back. She went back the next morning, and the morning after that. The bench stayed empty. No coat, no thermos waiting to be refilled. So no voice cutting through the fog with half-finished stories about wars no one remembered. Just the rusted metal, wet and cold, and the silence that sat in the space where he used to be. Maya stood there for 10 minutes the first day, 15 the second. On the third morning, she sat down on the bench itself, something she had never done, and held the thermos in both hands and stared at nothing. Then she started looking. She called shelters on her break, 3 of them. The woman at the first one asked for a name she didn't have. The second said they were full. The third said they hadn't seen anyone matching that description in weeks. After her shift, she walked. Not the usual route. The alleys, the side streets, the places where the streetlights didn't reach, and the air smelled like rust and wet concrete. She walked slowly, and scanning doorways, checking behind dumpsters, looking under the overpass where people sheltered when the rain came sideways. Nothing. No one had seen him. It was like the city had opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. On the second morning, still searching, Maya knelt at the bench to pick up a piece of trash the wind had blown against it. That's when she saw it, tucked into the slat where the metal frame met the seat. Not blown there by accident, placed. A card, laminated, red. Smooth to the touch in a way that felt deliberate, like someone had chosen the material carefully. At its center, pressed into the surface in gold ink, was a dragon. Not decorative, not playful, the kind of dragon that meant something. Maya pulled it free, held it up. The gold caught the weak morning light and seemed to move, just for a second. The way a flame moves when you breathe on it. She turned it over. Nothing on the back. No name, no number, no writing at all. Just the dragon. She slid it into her apron pocket. It sat there all day, heavy against her hip, like a stone she couldn't put down. 4 days passed. She didn't sleep well, couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the bench, empty. And behind the emptiness, something worse. A shape. The old man. But wrong. Bleeding. Sitting in the rain with his thin coat soaked through and his head tilted forward and the water running down his face looking too dark to just be water. A dream. She knew it was a dream. But it felt like memory. She woke from it on the fourth night, gasping, her sheets twisted around her legs, her heart loud enough to hear. The apartment was dark. The city outside was quiet, in that way it only gets between 3 and 4 a.m., not silent, just holding its breath. The Vipers had been back, twice. Both times she'd seen them from across the street. The same dark jackets, the same loose posture. They weren't looking at her directly, but they were there, watching the block, watching the diner, watching the way wolves watch a clearing they already know something is going to walk through. Maya hadn't told anyone. Who would she tell? She closed her eyes. The dream pressed against the inside of her eyelids. The old man, the rain, the blood. She breathed. On the fifth morning, she woke to a vibration. Not an alarm, not a phone. Something deeper. Something she felt in her chest before she heard it. A low, mechanical hum that moved through the floor of her apartment and up through the mattress and into her bones. She sat up. The room was still dark. The clock on her phone read 5:12 a.m. The vibration came again, stronger, rhythmic. The kind of sound that doesn't come from one thing. It comes from several things moving together. Engines, multiple engines, close. Maya swung her legs over the side of the bed, crossed the room, reached the window, pulled back the curtain. The street below was full of black. 5 SUVs, identical, lined up along the narrow road like a sentence written in a language she didn't speak yet. Their engines idled, low, patient, the kind of patience that isn't waiting. It's already arrived. Men stood on the sidewalk in formation, tailored suits, charcoal, pressed. Not a single crease out of place. They didn't move. They didn't look around. They just stood, shoulders back, faces forward, and every single one of them was looking up, at her window. Maya's hand dropped from the curtain. The card, still folded into the pocket of the apron she'd hung by the door the night before, seemed to pulse. She didn't imagine it. Maya didn't move. She stood at the window, hand still on the curtain, heart loud in her chest. And below, the men in suits stood perfectly still, all of them looking up at her like they had been waiting for her to appear. She let the curtain fall, stepped back. Her breath came shallow, fast, the kind of breathing that happens when your body knows something before your mind catches up. 3 minutes later, someone knocked. Not loud, not urgent, just 3 controlled taps that somehow felt louder than shouting. Maya crossed the apartment barefoot. She didn't check the peephole. She already knew. She opened the door. The man standing in the hallway was young, mid-30s, maybe, tall, sharp suit that looked like it cost more than her rent. His hair was perfectly styled. His posture was perfect. His eyes were the kind of calm that didn't come from peace. It came from control. He looked at her, and then he said her name. Miss Jenkins. Not a question, not a guess. He already knew. Maya's throat tightened. My name is Kenji Han, he said. His voice was smooth, measured, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. My grandfather has requested your presence. Her mind caught on one word. Grandfather. I don't understand, she whispered. You will. He stepped back, gestured toward the hallway. It wasn't a suggestion. She grabbed her jacket, slipped on shoes. moved like someone in a dream where the rules didn't make sense, but the dream kept going anyway. 20 minutes later, Maya sat in the back of a black SUV. She hadn't changed. Still in the clothes she'd slept in. She hadn't asked where they were going. She hadn't asked what this was. She just sat with her hands folded in her lap and watched the city transform through the window. They crossed Lake Washington. Pioneer Square disappeared behind them. The diner, the bench, the wet streets, and the fog. Everything that had been her life for the past 7 months fell away like a skin she didn't know she'd been wearing. Bellevue rose around them. Glass towers, clean sidewalks, gates that opened without anyone pressing a button. The kind of wealth that didn't announce itself. It just was. The SUV pulled through a private drive. Trees on both sides. Manicured. Perfect. Then a house. No, not a house. An estate. Stone and glass and silence. Kenji opened her door. She stepped out onto gravel that crunched under her shoes. Inside, the air smelled clean. Expensive. Not like cologne. Like space. Like the kind of quiet that only money could buy. And at the far end of a long hallway, standing near a wall of windows that overlooked the water, was the old man. Only he wasn't the old man anymore. He wore a tailored suit, charcoal, pressed. His beard was trimmed. His posture was straight. His eyes, sharp, clear, no fog behind them, locked onto hers the moment she entered the room. Maya stopped walking. Her legs wouldn't carry her any further. He turned fully toward her, and then he bowed his head. "Maya," he said softly. Her breath caught. "My name is Han Dae-jung." The air in the room changed, got heavier. Kenji stood beside him now, hands folded in front, face unreadable. Han took a step forward. "This is the chairman," Kenji said quietly. Maya's knees felt weak. Han continued, his voice low and deliberate. "For 7 months, I walked the streets of your city. Not because I had to, because I wanted to see what kind of place Seattle had become. I wanted to see if anyone still remembered what compassion looked like." He paused. "Thousands of people passed me every day. Thousands. And only you stopped." Maya's hands were shaking. "You fed me when you had nothing," Han said. "That tells me more about your character than any amount of money or status ever could." She opened her mouth, closed it. No words came. Han's expression softened. Just slightly. "Decades ago," he said, "in Busan, a young woman hid me when I was being hunted. She tended my wounds. She gave me food when betrayal was closing in on all sides. That woman was your grandmother." Maya's chest tightened. "I owed her a debt I could never repay. And when she passed, I thought that debt died with her." He looked at her like he was seeing someone else. Someone from a long time ago. "But then you appeared, every morning, with your paper bag, and your thermos, and your kindness, and I realized the circle was closing." Tears burned at the edges of Maya's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Han stepped closer. "I don't offer you money, Maya. I offer you protection. I offer you family. I offer you a place in a world that will never let you drown again." He held her gaze. "From today on," he said, his voice quiet but absolute, "you belong to us. If you leave now, you're going to miss everything that's about to happen to her. The protection, the possession, the man who's already decided she's his. Don't walk away. You need to see what comes next. Hit that subscribe button. Because this story is just getting started." Maya didn't speak. She couldn't. Behind Han, Kenji stood in silence. His eyes never left her, and the way he looked at her steady, unwavering, like she was something he had been waiting for his entire life, made the air between them feel charged, dangerous, inevitable. 6 weeks after that morning in Bellevue, the Vipers were gone. Maya didn't see it happen. She just woke up one morning, walked to the diner for her shift, and noticed the block felt different. Quieter. The men in dark jackets who used to lean against the wall and smoke and watch, they weren't there anymore. By the following week, the diner had new ownership. The manager who docked her tips was gone. Just gone. No explanation. No 2-week notice. One day he was there. The next, he wasn't. And when Maya asked the cook what happened, he just shrugged and said, "New boss bought the place. Cleaned house?" She knew. She didn't have to ask. 2 weeks after that, an envelope arrived at her apartment. Thick, cream-colored. Her name written in elegant script across the front. Inside was a check and a letter. "Your tuition has been paid in full. Focus on your studies. The diner is yours if you wish to return. Either way, you are ours to protect. No signature." But she knew the handwriting. Steady, controlled. The kind of hand that had signed contracts worth more than she could imagine. Maya sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the check for a long time. Everything she had been drowning in, rent, overdrafts, the weight of trying to survive on 2 jobs and no sleep, it lifted, all at once. Like someone had reached down and pulled her out of water she didn't even realize was over her head. But there was something else too. Kenji. He was always there, not intrusive, not obvious, but always there. He drove her to class in the mornings, waited outside while she sat through lectures. She told him he didn't need to. He smiled, barely, and said nothing. He stood outside her apartment building in the evenings, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed but alert. Like a guard dog that didn't need to bark to be dangerous. She asked him once why he was doing this. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Because you matter." And the way he said it, low, quiet, like a fact that didn't need defending, made something shift in her chest. Weeks passed. She started noticing things. The way his eyes followed her when she moved. The way his jaw tightened when another man spoke to her in class. The way he stood just close enough that she could feel the heat of him without him touching her. He never crossed a line, but the line was there, and it was getting thinner. One night, after a late study session, Maya came out of the library to find him leaning against the SUV. Waiting, like always. She walked toward him, tired, hungry, her bag heavy on her shoulder. He straightened when he saw her, opened the door without a word. She paused before getting in. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know." "Then why?" He looked at her, really looked at her. His eyes moved across her face like he was memorizing something he couldn't afford to forget. "Because I want to." Her breath caught. He was close, closer than usual. She could see the way his chest rose and fell, could see the tension in his shoulders, could see the way his hand flexed at his side like he was stopping himself from reaching for her. She didn't move. Neither did he. For a moment, the space between them felt like a held breath. Like if either of them moved, something would break. And then his phone buzzed. The moment shattered. Kenji pulled back, checked the screen. His expression shifted, just slightly, back into the mask of control he wore so well. "We should go," he said. Maya got into the car without another word. In the weeks that followed, the line between protection and possession blurred in ways Maya hadn't expected. There were moments, small ones, where his hand lingered on her back as he guided her through a door. Where his gaze held hers a beat too long. Where the silence between them felt heavier than words. She told herself it meant nothing, but her body knew better. 3 weeks later, she woke up feeling wrong. Not sick, not exactly, just off. Her body felt heavier. Her stomach turned at the smell of coffee. Coffee she used to love. And when she checked her phone and scrolled back through her calendar, her heart dropped. She was late, 2 weeks late. Maya sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub and stared at the tiles. No, not possible. She hadn't. But the dates didn't lie, and her body didn't lie. The next morning, she went to a clinic 3 neighborhoods away, where no one would recognize her. The doctor was kind, professional. She asked questions Maya barely heard, took samples, told her to wait. 20 minutes later, the doctor came back. She sat down across from Maya, folded her hands on the desk. "You're pregnant." The words hit like glass breaking. Maya opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The doctor continued. "About 6 weeks, still very early. Do you have support? Someone you can talk to?" Maya nodded, but she wasn't sure if it was true. Maya waited 3 days before she told him. 3 days of waking up nauseous. 3 days of staring at her phone and not pressing call. 3 days of Kenji waiting outside her apartment like always, watching her with those eyes that saw everything she tried to hide. She'd rehearsed it 100 different ways. None of them sounded right. On the 4th day, she couldn't hold it anymore. He was leaning against the SUV when she came out. Same posture, same calm. But the moment he saw her face, something shifted in his expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, not casual, direct. Maya opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I need to talk to you." He straightened, opened the door. "Get in." They didn't drive far, just to a park overlooking the water, empty at this hour. The kind of quiet that made every word feel louder than it was. Kenji turned off the engine, turned toward her, waited. Maya's hands were shaking. She folded them in her lap, pressed them together, tried to find words that didn't exist. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was so complete, it felt like the air had stopped moving. Kenji didn't blink, didn't move. His face was unreadable, the kind of blank that meant he was processing something too big to show. Then he exhaled, slow, controlled. He reached for his phone, made a call. His voice was calm, steady. "Clear the house, everyone out. Now." He hung up, looked at her. "Come with me." They drove in silence. Maya's heart hammered the entire way. She didn't know what he was thinking, didn't know what he was going to say, didn't know if she had just broken something between them that couldn't be fixed. When they arrived at the estate, the hallways were empty. No security, no staff. Just silence and the sound of their footsteps on marble. Kenji led her to a private room, closed the door behind them, and then he turned to her. His eyes weren't cold. They weren't angry. They were something else, something darker, heavier. "This child is mine." Not a question, a statement. You've come this far with Maya. You've watched her go from drowning to protected, from invisible to claimed. Don't stop now. This is where everything comes full circle. Hit that subscribe button, because you need to see how her story ends. His hand moved, slowly, deliberately. He placed it on her stomach. Flat, firm, like he was claiming something that had always belonged to him. Maya's breath caught. "No one will ever touch you again," he said. His voice was low, absolute. "You understand that?" She nodded. She didn't know if it was fear or relief or something in between. "Say it," he whispered. "I understand." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. his hand still on her stomach. Warm, grounding. "You're mine, Maya. You've always been mine. From the moment you sat beside my grandfather on that bench. You just didn't know it yet." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I know. I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be ready. I'll carry it for you." And the way he said it, so certain, so final, made something inside her break and heal at the same time. She leaned into him. Let herself be held. Let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe she wasn't drowning anymore. Maybe she'd been pulled to shore, and maybe the shore had arms that wouldn't let go. Later that evening, Han summoned them both. He sat in his study, hands folded on the desk, expression unreadable. Kenji stood beside Maya, his presence solid, unyielding. Han looked at them for a long time. Then he nodded. "The circle closes," he said quietly. "Your grandmother gave me life. You gave me hope. Now you give me legacy." He stood, walked around the desk, placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. The weight of it felt like a crown she hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. "You are family now, not by blood, by something stronger." Maya swallowed hard. Han turned to Kenji. His voice dropped, commanded, "Protect her, with everything." "I will." Han's gaze moved back to Maya. "You will want for nothing. You will fear no one, and your child will inherit more than wealth. They will inherit a name that carries weight in every city on this coast." It was a promise, a declaration, a vow that bent the world around it. 3 days later, Maya overheard voices in the hallway outside her room at the estate. She pressed her ear to the door. Threats from the east. "They know about her." "How?" "We're not sure, but they're watching. Double security. No one gets within a mile of her." Kenji's voice, cold, controlled. "And if they try? Then they don't leave breathing." Silence. Maya pulled back from the door, her heart pounding. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. That night, Kenji appeared at her door. "Pack a bag," he said. "You're staying in the main house until further notice." "Why?" "Because I said so." His tone left no room for argument. Maya didn't argue. She just followed. Because somewhere between the bench and the estate, between kindness and protection, she had stopped being just Maya Jenkins. She had become something else. Someone claimed. Someone guarded. Someone who belonged to a king. 6 months later, Maya walked across a stage in a cap and gown she had never imagined wearing. Her hand rested on her stomach, rounded now, visible even under the loose fabric of her graduation robe. The audience clapped. Her classmates smiled. The dean shook her hand and handed her a diploma that represented more than just nursing school. It represented survival, transformation, a life rebuilt from the wreckage of poverty and exhaustion into something she was still learning to recognize as her own. But Maya's eyes moved past all of them, out to the back of the auditorium where Kenji stood in the shadows, watching, always watching. When the ceremony ended, she found him in the parking lot, leaning against the black SUV. Same posture, same calm. But when he saw her, something in his face softened. Just a little. "Proud of you," he said quietly. Maya didn't know what to say to that. The words felt too big, too heavy. So she just got in the car. They drove through Pioneer Square. She asked him to. She didn't explain why. She didn't have to. Kenji had learned to read her silences the way some people read books. The streets looked different now. Cleaner, safer. The diner was still there, under new management, still serving the same coffee, still open at 5:45 a.m. for people who needed somewhere to go when the rest of the city was still asleep. The bench was still there too. Rusted, weathered, empty. Kenji pulled over. Maya stepped out, and that's when she saw her. An old woman, thin, hunched, sitting on the curb with a cardboard sign that said nothing. Just her presence. Quiet. Invisible. The way Maya had been once. The way the world decided some people were allowed to be. Maya walked toward her slowly. She reached into the bag she'd brought, the same paper bag, folded and creased, but still holding together after all these months. Inside were 2 bao buns, a small carton of orange juice, a thermos of tea. The same ritual, the same offering, the same quiet act that had changed everything. She knelt, handed them over. The woman looked at her, eyes wide, confused. Like kindness was a language she'd forgotten how to speak. "For you," Maya said softly. The woman's hands shook as she took the bag. Her fingers, thin, weathered, scarred by cold and time, wrapped around it like it was something precious. "Thank you," she whispered, like she hadn't heard those words in a long time, like maybe she thought she never would again. Maya smiled. "You're not invisible." The woman's eyes filled with tears. Maya stood, turned, and Kenji was there. Not in the SUV, not standing back. He was beside her. He knelt, not to the woman, to Maya. His hand found hers, his eyes steady, unreadable but somehow softer than she'd ever seen them. "You fed a king without knowing it," he murmured. Maya's throat tightened. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who had claimed her, protected her, built walls around her that no one could breach. And in his eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not possession, not control. Gratitude. From across the street, near the estate's second SUV, Han stood watching. His suit immaculate, his posture straight, but his expression, just for a moment, was something close to peace. He had walked these streets for 7 months. Thousands had passed him. Only one had stopped. And because of that, a circle had closed. The rain began to fall. Soft at first, then heavier. Maya looked at the bench, at the woman eating quietly, sheltered under the awning, at Kenji still kneeling beside her, at the black SUVs idling in the fog like sentinels. She didn't belong to the streets anymore, but she hadn't forgotten them either, and she never would. Kenji stood, offered his hand. Maya took it. They walked back to the SUV together. The rain soaked through her graduation gown. She didn't care. The rain had always been there. It had been there the first morning she brought breakfast to the bench. It had been there when she met Kenji. It had been there when everything changed. The rain was Seattle, and Seattle was home. The city moved on the way cities do, indifferent, relentless. But somewhere in the distance, the black dragon watched his legacy take root, and a girl who had once brought breakfast to a homeless man on a bench now carried a kingdom inside her. Kindness is never wasted. It always comes back, sometimes as protection, sometimes as power, and sometimes as a kingdom you never asked for, but earned anyway.